Welcome to the Monkey Mind Podcast, your number one platform for athletes and mental health. Hosted by myself, Danny Perez. Today's episode's guest is Jodi Puleo. Jodi is a spiritual healer who does her work with Reiki as well as sitting down with her clients and making the connection between the brain and the body. But before we get to today's episode, we have a quick word from our sponsor. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Daily Dose CBD Inc. Daily Dose CBD Inc. creates full-spectrum CBD products ranging from tinctures, bombs, and dog treats. Research has shown that CBD has successful results in aiding in the following areas: anti-inflammation, anxiety, PTSD, help with breaking addiction, neuroprotection, epilepsy, arthritis, chronic pain, and sleeping disorders. Daily Dose makes an extremely safe and effective product that we know you will love, enjoy, and benefit from. Daily Dose has given Monkey Mind listeners 15% off all their orders. Head over to dailydosecbdinc.com and use promo code MonkeyMind15 for 15% off your purchases. That's promo code MonkeyMind15 for 15% off all your orders at dailydosecbdinc.com. All right, we have Jodi Puleo on today. Welcome. Thank you for coming on to the Monkey Mind Podcast. I appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if you can just introduce yourself to everybody, who you are and what you do in the mental health field.
So my name is Jodi, like Danny just said. I'm a spiritual healer. About 10 or 11 years ago, I learned Reiki. And once I learned Reiki, I realized that there was another way that you can help someone work through what's going on in their mind and their body to provide some healing. So I started to dabble in doing some Reiki and also sitting down with them and talking to them about what their body is trying to tell them and how their mind might be interfering with their body's ability to heal. And I started to discover that there's lots of traumas that can be stuck in our bodies. And we may not even recognize it. We become so used to it, it's almost like just having your left pinky finger. It's just there. You're just used to it being there. But then once you start to heal it, you start to realize all the things that you didn't recognize were holding you back. You get rid of blockages, is what we like to call it a lot in Reiki.
Okay. And how'd you get into that? What was like the starting point that got it all for you, got it all going?
That's a really cool question, because actually I have 4 kids, but at the time I had 2. And my daughter, Natalie, she was, I think, 2.5 at the time, and I just had my son. And they both had these horrible, horrible gastrointestinal problems. We couldn't figure out what was going on. I was in the doctor's office all the time. I was about to lose my job because I had to take all this time off of work. And so I went to go have some Reiki for myself to actually feel better. Mm-hmm. And when I was there, she said, you should learn Reiki to do it on your kids. So I did. And I went home and I did it on my kids. And they got better. Not because I took them to the doctor, not because I changed their diet, not because I followed what they told me to do. It's because I did Reiki on them. So that's when I realized this is kind of a miracle thing that can bring about so much healing, and I really wanted to bring that to other people as well. Interesting.
And what's the process like with Reiki? How do you, because I've heard of it, I think a lot of people have heard of it, I think it's kind of becoming something that's maybe more popular now, but what's the process of it and kind of getting started, and when you're doing it, what is it exactly?
So Reiki is not very well regulated. And there are a lot of the teachings are pretty much passed down as word of mouth, basically. Okay. And there are 4 different levels, at least in the Sui and the Shambhala Reiki that I know of. And you start off by going to a practitioner and learning those 4 levels. You can start doing Reiki after just learning Reiki 1. It's not like you need the 4th one, but you need to have all 4 in order to be able to teach.
Okay.
And to pass that along to other people.
Okay, gotcha. And then I want to talk about like the mental health piece now. We spoke about that before. Obviously, when you were at the rink and I met you, we had a nice conversation about it and like the spiritual aspect that you take on it. And I want you to kind of dive into that and your thought process with that and how it, coincides with mental health and as a whole, and just being connected with yourself and your body and your spirit.
It's very important, I found. It's actually what I base my practice off of. You really don't feel well if your mind, body, and spirit aren't in congruence, if they're not in balance. And oftentimes you can try to overcome that by focusing just on one area. But all three are really integral to feeling happy and being well. The way that I do spiritual work with others is that when they come and they sit with me and they work with me, I talk about the energy that their body is feeling. What are your emotions? What are your feelings? And how that might be affecting you. And then we go into not necessarily trying to say there's something wrong with your thinking, because that inherently tells you there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with anybody. There just may be some things that you've picked up, some thought patterns, and they're running on autopilot without even knowing it. And so in the spiritual sense, the approach is to come in and let you know that you are not your thoughts. You are not your mind. You're actually a spiritual body that's having a human experience. And to connect to that spiritual part, your soul, that sense of like that still small voice within that lets you know when you're feeling like what's right, what's wrong. It's such a peaceful, amazing place where you just feel completely connected and complete. There's nothing more that you need to do. When you connect to that, then it becomes so easy to identify those thoughts, patterns, and to be able to sort of dissect from them, get some distance between them. And then you can really begin to see things from a different perspective. So the healing doesn't come from actually taking those thought patterns and tearing them apart. It comes from actually taking a step back and getting into a natural state where you feel more connected to your spirit.
Yeah, which I feel like is something that's kind of lacking right now with just how stimulated we are with everything. And I think the lifestyle that we all live, it's always so go, go, go that you don't really have time to take a second and ask yourself how you're feeling, or just be present in the moment and check up on your body. Not so much being present in an activity, but just more so being present in yourself and just kind of doing that self-regulation. And I think it's so important. I think that's kind of why people are so stressed, and it's just a fast-paced life that we're living.
I agree. I think that we've gotten so used to it that we think it's normal. And really, if you sit back and you go and have a massage and you realize just how tense you are, it should be such a clue to us that we're really putting too much pressure on ourselves to be more than what we need to be. But there is always this fear that's kind of running around with all of this sort of all this information that's coming. Am I doing it right? Did I do this?
Exactly.
Did I miss this? And so it kind of automatically puts us in this state of anxiety that we don't really need to be in.
Yeah, that's always a tough thing to battle. It's that, am I doing this right? Or it's that lost feeling. I know personally I felt that big time. And I think that's why having a connection to something spiritual, whatever that is for you, whether it be religion or just just believing in a higher power, or just believing that you're a spiritual body and understanding that, or a spiritual, like a soul having a human experience. Just, I think we often can get disconnected from that.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that whatever it is for you, if it is religion, great, if that's important to you. I think it's important to have some sort of belief in something bigger than ourselves, and a higher power that is inherently good, and that this is a good thing, that what we're going through, this human experience. But it's hard to understand that. And that was something that I struggle with immensely at times throughout my life. And it's a very anxious feeling to almost not feel like you're in control, but wanting that control. And then we just kind of overstimulate ourselves with things to like make us feel like we're having control. Like that's what I would do. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like you feel so hopeless at times, and just like, I can't do anything right now. And then you kind of lose belief in whatever it is you believe in. For me, it was I'm Christian. I believe in Jesus. So, but I don't negate anyone else because I don't feel that they're wrong, because I can't prove anything. They can't prove anything. It's just, hey, I respect everybody. This is just kind of what keeps me in line right now. But I just kind of want you to talk about how that piece of being connected to something higher than yourself, and having that connection to your soul and like religion or spirituality is so important, because I feel like we kind of drift from that a little bit.
A lot of morticians, I know that sounds really kind of depressing, but that's typically when I talk to them and I tell them what they do, that's what they say to me. They say, after someone passes away, they feel so horrible for the people who are grieving because they're so lost, because they don't have that connection, just like you said, that sort of like foundation to fall back onto, that there is something out there that's really amazing and powerful, immense, bigger than us, that's watching out for us and taking care of us, and that everything does happen for our benefit one way or another. And if you think about not believing in something like that, you're automatically going to wake up rather anxious and fearful, believing that at any given moment there could be something terrible that will happen if you don't do all of these things, like get straight A's in school, be accomplished. If you have an injury in sports and you're out, oh no, my whole life trajectory is ruined. But actually, it might be that there's something so much more better for you. Yeah, so much cooler. And that injury opens up so many doors that you never would ever experience if you didn't have it. So not to say that those feelings of despair are, not valid. They are. But it's also very helpful to have that basis where you say, wow, like, okay, I felt that way for a minute and I get that. I'm grieving it, and now I'm going to see what the world has to offer me.
Yeah, I think that message resonates with me so well, because when I was at like a pretty low point with hockey, it was kind of like, this isn't in the trajectory that I'd like it to, but you kind of just were forcing that, like forcing the square into the round hole, you know what I mean? Just kind of trying to make it work. And it's crazy that an injury kind of took hockey away from me for a bit, and then ultimately the pandemic, and now it felt so low that I had lost this thing that was so important to me. But sometimes we can't close the doors on ourselves when we should, and I just felt like I was kind of pushing it, and I need to make this happen. I am forcing it in the sense that I have to keep playing and playing to prove to myself, to prove to whoever. But I feel like this pandemic, in a way, has been beneficial for me, with taking it away from me and not having these opportunities to keep playing, in a sense. But now it's opened me up to the coaching side, and this is so fulfilling. I'm back in a place that I love, it up here in Maine. And I think that what you were kind of going off what you were saying about how these doors close on us, and they seem bad, but new ones open. And it's like, it's kind of out of your control in a way, but it ends up working out. And it's kind of weird how that happens, that it's like, wow, what was that,
It is like, wow, what was that? That's where a lot of times I see miracles. People talk about miracles because they say, oh my God, like I never, ever, ever would have noticed that there's this whole new career in this path that was available to me that really fulfills me. And I never would have known that if I didn't have that injury. And so you kind of can look at that as like, there was somebody out there looking out for me. And that, I tend to look at those as like the little miracles that we experience. Yeah,
definitely. The things that you want and you think that you need in your life aren't always that. And I think that there are things that come into control and say, hey, like, this isn't what you need right now, or this isn't what you need at all. I have bigger things for you, bigger plans for you, and having faith in that. And just, you have to put in 100% of your effort and buy in as well. You have to be an equal participant in that, but sometimes you have to look at that perspective. And I think the perspective shift is something huge that I think is talked about, but to really practice it is another thing that's pretty tough.
It is. A lot of the great spiritual teachers out there, they oftentimes say, you need to ask yourself just a basic question. Do you see the world as being a kind, benevolent world? Or do you see it as being scary and hostile? And if you do, ask yourself that question, and you find that you mostly answer with it feeling hostile and scary, then you won't have a different life than someone who sees it as kind and benevolent. But you'll feel, and your experiences will be a lot more they'll be different.
Yeah.
They'll be much more fretful, full of fear and despair. So it's kind of just starting there. Is a good place.
Yeah, and what you focus on, from what I've noticed in my life, what you focus on tends to be what you receive back. And I think if you focus on the negatives that are in your life and the things that you lack, that tends to be what is the feedback. But if you focus on the things that you do have and just being grateful for those things, you're automatically put into a state of, I guess, joy in what you do have, and you do feel like feelings of reciprocation back, and you start to kind of feel better about, the places that you're at right now in your life. And I feel like more things come your way in a sense. But when you focus on those negatives, it feels like you wake up and then you stub your toe, and then something else happens. You get every red light in the way to traffic. And I just feel like those things actually do compound.
They do. But the funny part is that example is so perfect, because there have been times where I've had experience of talking to someone. Like, I got every red light, and then I got to the street that I was supposed to turn on, and there was a car accident. And I got every red light, and thank goodness, because it stopped me from maybe that car accident. So there's always this reason. And so you're right about that perspective. If you come in and believe that everything is bad, then you're just going to feel that, and you're going to look for it. You're going to focus on it.
Exactly.
And then you don't get to see the good, and then you don't feel good.
Yeah.
So it's it's a little tricky, because getting yourself out of that, you can't tell yourself, well, you can, but I'm going to advise you not to. I'm going to advise you not to tell you that your thinking's bad or wrong, or that there's something wrong with you. Instead, of what I'm going to say is that there's a place and time in your experience where you started to feel some things were starting not to feel great.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what ended up coming into your mind, and this is what you focused on. And now, in order to change, you have to give yourself compassion and love, and shine light on all of the beautiful things about you. And then that really helps to open up.
Yeah. If you can talk about the things that you specifically kind of tell people in your work to help them shift that perspective, what are some of the things that you do tell these people? I know that a lot of like what you were saying about the thought loops and how we kind of get stuck in these when things start going rough, and then you all of a sudden, like, years go by and you still kind of your wiring is just programmed to run this on autopilot, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So how do we get ourselves out of that? I know that, attitude of gratitude and writing down 3 things you're grateful for 21 days helps rewire your brain for happiness is something I saw.
That makes sense.
Like, is that like what are other examples of things like that, and things that you tell the people that you work with, say, hey, do this and have this perspective, and slowly you'll start to notice a difference?
That's such a beautiful question, and I've noticed that it's so different for every single person. And that's kind of the beauty of what I do, is that I can really meet with a person, and just wherever they are is where I meet them. And so their prescription for happiness is going to be wildly different than maybe someone else's. I can kind of share with what I'm working with now. I do have a client who tends to be incredibly anxious without knowing it. So her prescription for happiness is actually to find her calm. And when she finds her calm, then she realizes that she's been going 1,000,000 miles an hour and doesn't even realize that she can take a breath and appreciate what's happening around her. And so that is what we work on most of the time. And finding her calm does mean that she needs to let go of a lot of the sort of really rigid rules that she was brought up with. In order to be a good person, you have to follow this rule book.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't follow this script or this rule book, then you're bad, and you have to beat yourself up. And so it comes to sort of helping her to recognize that that was maybe just the perspective of the people that she grew up with, but there's something so much broader and wider.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how that's been helping her. Other people that I work with, they may have had a lot of trauma growing up, that's left an impression, causing them to see the world as being someplace to hide from and be afraid of, than it is to be open and to see themselves as being someone who is even protected, even during the darkest hours, because whatever they had to go through, it helped to open up and unveil and unleash things that will help them to have a fuller experience in life. It's so hard to see at that time, though. And, I can't bring someone there until they're ready when I'm doing trauma work. But with this particular client, when he's ready for that, and so we work through those sort of impressions that have been left and how to release them so that he can open up and see the world as being a bright, happy place, not full of terror. And so there isn't necessarily a prescription that I use. It's so specific for whatever somebody needs at that time.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to give advice to everybody, I guess I would say that, loving yourself and having compassion are the two most healing things that I've ever seen in the practice of what I do. And I teach people that never ever think that you're bad. The impressions that you have, the thought processes, the things that have happened don't make you bad. There's no such thing really as being like bad because you think one way or bad because you're not doing it the way that you were taught to do it. You yourself are such an individual and you're so unique, and you were made this perfect version of of whatever. I believe in God, so I'm just going to say God wanted on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so important to have compassion and to allow yourself to be, come out. Don't stuff yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, I think a lot of the times we beat ourselves up and feel as though we're not doing it right.
Yes.
And it's like, what is right? And that's just like doing what you want and doing what makes you most fulfilled and happy. And I think that I learned this lesson. I'm still learning it. But I had like a crazy perspective shift in my freshman year of high school. I had this religion teacher, Doc Hartling.
Cool.
He was awesome. I loved the Grateful Dead, introduced me to the Grateful Dead. And like, I went to Catholic school my whole life, 1 through 12. But in grade 9, freshman year, first day of class, he said, the Bible isn't supposed to be taken literally. It's a book on guidance, and kind of follow that in the way that you want, in the way that you feel is most comfortable to you. And I think that some people that may rub the wrong way and some people that might resonate with them. And for me, it just kind of shifted my mindset because I feel like I always followed it like you have to do this, 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 and this, and this. And for me, for some people that works, and that's great. If that's what works for you, unbelievable. But for me, I felt like I was always like kind of had this thing looking over me like, are you doing this right? Are you doing this right? Are you doing this right? And then you beat yourself up and you just kind of keep beating yourself up and beating yourself up. And I feel like you have to give yourself a break too. And that's something that I've learned the hard way, and just you dive yourself or dig yourself a deep hole because you just feel so negative and you feel like you're doing everything wrong. But you have to learn to give yourself a break. And I can't stress the importance of that enough, and that's just something that you kind of touched on and mentioned, which I think I just want to reiterate that.
No, I think that's beautiful. That's really nice. I mean, that goes along with like what so many people who believe that there's some sort of rule book or doctrine that will make you a good human.
Exactly.
But goodness is already inherent in all of us. I'm going to back that up a little bit. Some souls are put into bodies where the brains aren't, there might be a way that it's formed, and it's difficult for a person to feel empathy or, that, like, I think that they're psychopaths, so I can't say that I will not blanket that and say that goodness is inherent in all of us. Their goodness has been muted somehow, but the soul is good. It's just the human body.
Interesting. Yeah. I haven't heard that one before. That's kind of making me think. I always thought that people were always inherently good, but to kind of have that feeling of like some people just, it doesn't, I guess, click easier. I do understand that in a way, but I like to think that everyone's inherently good, and then it's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe some people just don't have the wiring for it. I don't know.
Well, they don't have they may not be born with it, or something's happened that has. But that doesn't mean that they can't, transform or grow or develop it. I mean, it's certainly a possibility, but it is important to know if you've got their hair on the back of your neck that are coming up when you're talking to someone. That's sort of your gut, your intuition. That's sort of someone saying, listen, just listen. Something doesn't feel right here, and just go with that.
Yeah. And I actually love that you mentioned that. I think our body's a big time signal for us in and finding our triggers. I know you want to go back and talk about what you mentioned about your triggers and how you prescribe everyone something different for their happiness. And I think that what triggers some people that makes them anxious or uneasy is different for everybody. And I think that you can use your body as a way to discover where you feel anxious and where you find your triggers. And then you can also use your body to see where you're feeling most fulfilled and most happy. And I think that we try and use a one-track mindset and say, hey, this works for this person, I got to do it.
Right.
I think what works for everybody is completely different, or each and every person. I think the same goes for noticing what is making you anxious or uneasy. I think it's important to take some time and listen to your body and see, hey, like, I'm uneasy right now. Why is this making me uneasy? And going through the thought process that way. Is that something that you tell people when you work with them?
I do, especially when I hear someone say, hey, this particular situation, or I respond to this person like this, and no one else does. And there must be something wrong with me. And I reassure them, no, there's something very much that your body is trying to tell you. There's something very much that your spirit's coming through, that you're getting some legitimate messages there. And the worst thing you can do is to ignore it or push it down and push it away. As silly as it may seem, as traumatic, there's something very real happening there for you, and you're worth it, and you need to look into that. And that's part of your job here. Your job is not to pretend like you don't have those feelings, or to say, oh, I don't have those feelings, so I'm cured. No, it's actually to pay attention to them and see what messages or what your experience is with that particular person, or an idea, or place, or job, or whatever you have going on.
What do you feel, in your opinion, is the reason for, I guess, this rise in people being more outspoken in their mental health and how they've struggled? Do you feel like there is a rise in mental health issues, or do you feel that people are just being more open to talking about it? And why do you feel that that's the case?
I do think that there is a rise in mental health issues. I've read some research on that, and it seems like it's pretty statistically valid that there is a rise in that. I do also believe that there's more tolerance in general in our society for a lot of different things, and so it's wonderful, I think, that people do rise up and talk about depression, anxiety, and how it affects them on a daily basis, and how it affects them at work, and how people at work are bothering them because they are insensitive to that. Sometimes I think that there's so many people, Danny, who are so sensitive, and they're just beautiful, beautiful souls. They're so sensitive. And then there's a lot of people too who don't experience emotions the same way. But who's to say one person is right over the other? There's really no right or wrong. It's just your experience. And so if we can make space for the people who don't have big feelings, why can't we make space for people who do and experience the world that way? So I think I love that people are coming out and being more vocal about it. And I feel like as me as a mental health professional, I'm trying to respond to the call.
Yeah, no, exactly. And obviously your work is greatly appreciated in helping people and being for them. I think there needs to be more people like that. And I think we all individually can help and impact each other as well. It doesn't have to come from a professional either. I think just being kinder to each other and being more patient with each other, understanding that we're all leading busy lives and we're all running around and trying to be our best selves, but not to take things so personally too. And what do you notice are some of the, I guess going back, what do you notice are some of the trends in maybe people that just talk to you, and as far as like triggers goes, like it seems to be like a common theme as to you're noticing with people these days that is making them anxious, or is it really just everyone's so different and it's hard to say?
Actually, I think it depends upon the age and where you are in your life, and I do see trends depending upon where you are. In young adults who are starting to come out and get their careers together, I see a lot of the, wow, I'm on my own now, and this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I feel a little lost, and my friend groups are shifting, and relationship troubles. It's very difficult when you're navigating a relationship and trying to figure out how not to exhaust yourself at your job, because a lot of young professionals get out there and they're like, I'm going to put everything into it. And then they realize, oh, wait, I don't get my summers off anymore. I don't get that chance to actually recuperate and recover. And so and then that insecurity and fear of, am I doing enough? Or I don't understand the perspective that is happening at work compared to mine. So there's so I see that, and then the underlying anxiety that I experience in high school students, middle school students, as well as in young adults, is there does seem to be this sense of just jitterness. I don't know how else to describe it, but it just seems like when I sit down to talk to someone, they are always ready to be on the move, to get up and go, to like what's going on here? What am I missing out on? And that I feel has increased since I even started doing this 10 years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I've noticed that. And then for people who are a little bit older in my age, who are, children, it's very different because there is sort of this super mom, super man, super dad, super human thing going on with them where I'm going to juggle every little thing that possibly, I'm going to be the best mom, I'm going to be the best teacher, I'm going to be the best housewife, I'm going to be the best. And then as actually physically impossible, it's quite impossible to be that. And so then there's that feeling I'm not good enough, and how do I be okay with that? And then there's legitimate issues as well that people are just, daily basis kind of things, like if you're coming from a place where you've had a lot of chaos in your life, maybe you didn't have the best upbringing, and then, those kind of issues that, just trying to help someone stabilize where they are.
Interesting. I want to go back to the young adult part, just kind of talk about that, because I think a lot of our listeners are kind of in that range.
Oh, cool.
And I feel like a lot of people do feel those feelings. I definitely have felt it for a very long time. And then now in this profession that I'm in with coaching, I do want to be as great as I can be. And there isn't that feeling of, am I doing enough? And I want to do more. And sometimes it can be paralyzing to feel like you're not doing enough, and then you don't know at times where to start if it's a new venture. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that message of, hey, I'm just getting into this professional career that I'm in. I want to be the best. And it's a very jittery feeling. And I know a lot of people, my friends, have opened up to me about that as well. So kind of what would you say to somebody in that moment and what they're feeling? Was it just kind of like slow down, or?
I would. I mean, that's a wonderful example. And yeah, I do. I see that a lot. So, I mean, it's just so prevalent. There isn't a grade that you get when you start a job. So you don't know if you're doing the best that you can. And, well, you are doing the best you can. But if you are doing the best, like, you're not getting that feedback right away. So oftentimes I kind of say that the most important thing is to take a step back and to not let yourself cycle into that, like, vicious sort of, is this enough? Did I do enough? And then push yourself and push and push. But instead, it's to kind of ground on what you know is what you can see. Have you gone into work every single day? Have you showed up? Have you answered your supervisor's sort of like basic things that they want you to do? Like, are you there on time if you need to be there on time? Are you getting the to-do list done? Then are you getting feedback that's saying that you're not enough? If you're not, then generally when you become a young adult, supervisors don't always tell you every day that you're doing enough. They expect you to know. And so you kind of have to base it off of that. Just like be very grounded in the way that you look at it, almost like basic kind of.
Yeah, it all ties in together too, because then, like you said earlier on about you're not your thoughts.
Right.
When you're doing these things that we were just talking about, like your new profession that you're in, and you're having these thoughts, it's controlling that and saying, hey, I'm not these thoughts. I am giving my best. I'm going all in. I need to give myself a break. And it's hard to juggle that, but tying those all in together, it does create a formula of success and feeling good in where you're at and what you're doing. And I think that's kind of a good thing that people can take with them in this age range of that young adulthood where you're trying to do everything and trying to be the best you can. But just knowing that those thoughts that creep in, you're not that. And if you're showing up every day and doing the best you can, then maybe you don't get that feedback, but you're doing what you need to be doing.
It's enough. It's enough. It's so enough. You're enough. Everyone is enough. And that's the other thing too, is that if the fit isn't right for you, that's not on you. That's just, it's not the right fit. And so if you notice that it takes so much effort for you to do something that is supposed to be a small part of your job, then maybe it's because your brain works or your body is in a better rhythm in a different place. And that's great to notice that. A lot of times when I work with young adults, it takes them a long time to recognize when it's their thoughts, their anxieties, and then when it's a wrong fit. So I definitely encourage people to do exactly what you said, where you sit and you sort of say, how much is this me being really worried? How much is this me putting too much pressure on myself? And how much is this that there's something legitimately wrong with the fit here?
Yeah, interesting. And then we notice when that's off, our physical being is off, and then I think that's why it's all connected with, a rise in illnesses, and, the mental definitely affects the physical. I lost like 30 pounds when I was yeah, it's brutal, and I was worried about getting sick. I know a lot of people have come on and talked about that, and it's just, that's why I stress the importance of this, and I'm happy that you mentioned that about, when you're off, like your psyche's off and you're not feeling great. It's not you, it's just the situation that you're in. It maybe needs a shift. But it's important to make that shift, because you prolong that and you stay in that negative space, or that space that doesn't really work. It can affect the physical for sure. At least I've noticed for me.
No, you're absolutely right. And when it affects the physical, and with what I do, once it's at the physical level, I know that it's gone deep.
Yeah.
That's because that's a physical manifestation of the emotional sort of trauma that you've experienced. And if it's coming out in that way, then it's time to really, really, really take care of yourself. I mean, really, you got to get serious about it. Go see counselors, go get acupuncture, go get Reiki healing, go, if you're psychotropic medication, if that's something that you're interested in. I tend to do a different route, where I would probably tell someone to try some herbs, or to actually try to do some remedies from another professional.
Okay.
But that's just an option. There's no right or wrong.
Exactly.
It's just another option.
Can you dive into that?
Absolutely.
Because I don't really know too much. I don't think many people do, but...
Yeah, no, there's acupuncturists who you can go to, who they understand the body in a way, and they can prescribe herbs that will help to naturally regulate hormones and imbalances. Okay. And if, for instance, if you have anxiety, sometimes you may have a yeast overgrowth, and that can cause so many stomach problems, and it can actually cause cloudy thinking. And so an herbalist or acupuncturist who works with herbs would help to restore the body's energy by putting in some needles that activate sort of those natural chi and those energy, the way that your body naturally moves, and then as well as give an herb to help to clear up the side effect of the anxiety, which would be the yeast.
Interesting. Can you comment on which herbs that you've seen have been beneficial for people with anxiety?
I can't, unfortunately, because I'm not educated in that. I know that I would trust every acupuncturist I've ever been to. I've trusted with that. So I would send anyone off to an acupuncturist who works with herbs.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned about is there yeast overgrowth in your gut, you said? Okay, because we've had many nutritional therapists on here before, and they stress the gut and the gut microbiome and how important it is.
Yes.
Because of the gut. We've talked about this, I believe, the first time we met, correct?
Oh, I think we did.
With the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm happy that you reiterated it, because we've discussed it before.
Yeah.
And it's just like another function of our body that directly affects our mental health, and how there's more. Jamie Shupp, she was on one of the episodes on our podcast. She mentioned that there's more serotonin produced in your gut than there is in your brain. But we think it's a chemical that comes from our brain, serotonin, dopamine.
Dopamine. Okay, that makes sense.
Dopamine. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah. I misspoke.
No,
it was
don't worry.
dopamine.
It's okay.
But there's more dopamine produced in your gut than there is in your brain. And you just mentioned about the herbals and how there's inflammation in with yeast in your gut, and it directly connects through the vagus nerve up to your brain. And it's just, I'm happy that you reiterated that, because I want to keep pounding it to people that, hey, this stuff is important with, your physical connection of the things that you take into your body and the things that you eat directly affect your mental health. And it's little changes. It's not crazy stuff. It's also affordable too. It's just, you can go and have chicken and brown rice, and that automatically is better than going to McDonald's. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like a small change. Just go to Walmart, and not the greatest source of chicken, but hey, it's better than going to McDonald's and making that small lifestyle change. By no means am I giving nutritional advice, but it's just like, that's a small thing that I've implemented that can work. And slowly but surely it gets you better.
No, you're right. Actually, I can't remember which famous person who died hundreds of years ago said that diet would be the way that we heal. And I've seen a lot of kind of holistic nutritionists who have stressed that. And I think you're right, and I love that. I think the one thing that I like to stress too is that our medical system is wonderful, but they don't always understand what causes the problem, right? So they may say, oh, you're depressed. Okay, let me give you this pill.
Mm-hmm.
It will help with your depression. But there's a really legit issue that caused that sadness, and it can be healed. And it is oftentimes, something that's complex and simple at the same time. And just going to talk to a counselor and going on meds oftentimes isn't enough. It really helps to try these other things, like get on some acupuncture, do some massage, some craniosacral, Reiki, and open up the energy sort of meridians in your body to try to get them back on track.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I haven't done the acupuncture yet, but that's something I'm going to have to try. But I totally understand about just getting a pill to solve the issue, and I don't want to dive too much into medication because I'm not well versed in it. But from my personal experience, I was going through a rough time, and I was given, here, take Xanax. It helps with your anxiety.
It does, yeah.
So, and it did, but it also took away kind of like, there was like that black cloud, took away the black cloud, but it also like kind of took away that shimmer that life kind of has, and that, I guess, that undertone of beauty that life has. And it kind of just made me feel flat. And I noticed what worked way better was getting out of the situation that I was in, more so than just taking Xanax.
That's beautiful, Danny. I mean, that's a wonderful way that you were in touch with your body and you listened and you trusted, and then you found something that worked better for you. And I definitely encourage everyone to do that. I do think our medical system is really stellar. I think it's really good. It's top notch. But I also believe that when you add these complementary therapies along with it, and you listen to yourself and let yourself guide you, and if you're having a hard time getting in touch because of anxiety or depression, then someone can help you with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can really sort of be your own boss and sort of take control.
Exactly.
What works for you.
Yeah, I try to tippy toe over kind of that sort of stuff just because I don't want to steer anybody down any direction. But I just think from my personal experience, it feels like just how easy I was able to get a pill to stop what, was going on in my head and my thoughts. It was just kind of a little bit alarming to me with the ease of access to that. And just, I remember being stopped halfway through and I was explaining. He's like, so what would you like? And I was like, I didn't even get to finish, but okay. Like, just got prescribed Xanax and that was it. It's just like, all right. It's a little...
No, I get it, yeah.
But medication works. It does work for a lot of people, and I'm not negating that at all, but it's just like, I feel like try other things before you just ingest a pill. There's other ways that are, I guess, more natural, and that are more controllable with situations and nutrition and where you're at, and that you can kind of get yourself out of that headspace that you're in before you just kind of say, all right, I'll take this pill and it'll all go away. Because I feel like it just subsides it, but the things are still there.
That's what I've noticed as well. I do notice, too, that sometimes someone's in a really, really low place or their anxiety's really high, go ahead and, start it, and then, but also try to find the root cause, really work on it. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're in a situation where it's just the stressors are too high, and that's where you need to be.
Yeah.
And then there are legitimate people who do have a brain that was it developed in a way where they do sometimes need to have something to help to regulate. They need some lithium or some, they might hallucinate and see things that other people don't. And in that case, I don't know if there's anything other than medication that helps in those situations. So it's all so specific to the person.
Exactly. I've had people who've opened up to me, just buddies and stuff, about kind of what their experience has been, and they have mentioned to me, like, hey, like, this is something, I take medication and it helps me with this, and I have to take it every day. And we have open conversations like, oh, why do you feel that? He's like, well, if I don't, I definitely notice there's a major difference, and I'm in a really bad place, or my attitude, my mindset is not where it needs to be. So, and that works for him, and that's why it's like, well, that's fantastic, and if you're in a place like that, then hey, that's the route that you have to take. So I just, like you mentioned, advocating for trying things out, for trying what works for you. It's not just, this is going to be the quick fix. and it's constantly changing too, because our situations in life change as well. And I want you to, I'm sure you know about that, and can reiterate on that message.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think that we're both saying the same thing. And I think it's so wonderful. It's that you don't have to just accept that. Okay, I'm depressed, and I have to take a pill every day. You don't have to accept that, and you don't need to also believe that you don't have to. Changing the habits and patterns can make such a huge difference, and so it's kind of encouraging people to know that. Step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to take up too much of your time here, so I just have a couple of closing kind of questions and statements. But I'm just really appreciative of you coming on here and talking about this stuff, because it's not easy, and I guess you could say it's becoming less taboo. But
Yes.
I feel like you always have that secondary thought in your mind before you say something when it comes to this stuff, because you don't want to offend people or say anything that could rub people the wrong way. But I'm just happy that you had the time and were willing to come and talk about this, because I know it's not easy, and you feel like you have to tippy toe around things. But I think the best way we can make progression in this is to have the most open conversation, no matter how hard it is, and just people talking and opening up about their personal experiences and the work that you're doing. So I just want to reiterate that I'm very grateful that you came on and were willing to talk about this. And before we close here, I was wondering if you can give some piece of advice or just a final note, maybe to someone struggling, or just people out there in general that they can take with them, or I guess just a final word of advice, or whatever the case is.
I do. I think that my advice to anyone is don't give up. If you find yourself in a situation where you're feeling really low, where things aren't, where you feel like you're stuck, where you feel like this is just the best it's going to get, don't give up. There's something else out there that will help you. You just haven't found it yet. And the more open you are, the more that you can receive what's available to you. So open your mind, open your heart, open everything, your gut, to the sense that you are here for a reason. You will have everything that you need when you need it, and it will come to you when you're ready to receive it. And if you're feeling like you're in a place where you're stuck, then start to put out that energy that you're looking for help and resources to come in, and then start to notice the things that come across your mind and what comes across your desk or what just pops up on your phone, because that is sort of the universal energy speaking to you. What you give back out, they're trying to reach back to you and help you. So never ever just say, wow, I'm just going to be miserable, depressed for the rest of my life, because that's not our natural state.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And again, super appreciative of you coming on, for your time.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it a lot. It was wonderful to come and talk about this. It was great talking to you, Danny. You're a great guy. And I do want to say, if I did say anything that rubbed anyone the wrong way, I certainly didn't mean to.
Yeah.
Just want to put that out there.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that's why I mentioned before about the kind of like the appreciation of you coming on here, because it's not easy, and people do shy away from openly talking about this stuff because it's so hard.
It is.
It's like you don't want to offend anybody, but it's like you have to have these conversations and share your perspective, and I share my perspective, and we talk about that, because that's where the real ground is made, and that's where you really find people help, or get the help, just by being able to have these raw conversations. So that's why I know it's not easy, and I hope no one's offended by this conversation or anything, but just trying our best to help people and
show that there's another option out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. But thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you. This has been great. Thank you.
Awesome.